Today I want to examine the progression systems in each Elder Scrolls game. We'll look at the influences behind the design decisions and the strengths and weaknesses of these systems. In my opinion, the progression system in a video game is one of the most important aspects. It defines your experience, how you play, and how you feel during every moment of gameplay. We are going to go chronologically, so today we're going to start with the Elder Scrolls Arena. Before we do that though, real quick, Editor Knight has to jump in and just let you know that there's going to be more than just the progression systems, because I've learned after making most of this video, it's actually impossible to separate all the systems. So we're going to talk about the progression systems, but also everything else involved in all the Elder Scrolls games. So let's start with Arena. The inspiration for Arena is clearly Dungeons and Dragons. At this point in the series, you gain levels through experience. Either you kill an enemy, you complete a quest. It's just like classic D&D. Even further, there's no Daedra yet. The enemies are goblins or liches. They're Dungeons and Dragons monsters. It really feels like I'm a kid playing Dungeons and Dragons with my brothers again. There aren't really skills. There's no custom classes. Actions are based on your attributes. If you want to pick a lock, well, what's your agility? How good is your class at thievery? What's your class's thievery effectiveness? You picked a warrior class, you're not going to be as good as a thief class. Your experience needed is based on what class you pick, similar to Dungeons and Dragons. When you do level up, the game rolls dice, just like old school D&D. A barbarian has a hit dice of 30. However, that means if they roll poorly, they might only gain 1 health on level up. An assassin has a hit die of d8, so they roll between 1 and 8 at level up. Your first level, you start at 25 plus that roll, plus an endurance modifier for each level. It reminds me of playing a wizard back in the day and rolling 1 for my first level. My brother would have made me keep it too, but the best you could get back then was 4 anyway. I want to show you this character sheet at my level up. As you can see, I'm a battle mage. That means I'm under the E experience threshold, so I need 1,200 experience to reach level 2. You can see I reached that from killing goblins and rats. Where it says bonus points, you get a random amount between 3 and 6. Right there, this is a bad level. I only got 3. It's just RNG. That's just bad luck for me. You also gain health based on your hit dice. I'm playing a battle mage. They have a D10 hit die. I have a +0 health modifier, so it looks like I rolled a 2 on that 1 out of 10 roll. Unlucky for me, this was a bad level. All progression and player power is based on your class, level, and attributes. If I try to pick a lock, it's going to look at my agility, my thieving efficiency, and my character level. If I'm trying to roll a saving throw, different classes have different saving throw tables. They get better as you gain levels. Skills don't really exist except as ability checks, and there is no progression system based on what you do. It's just kill monsters, do quests. As an introduction to the series, this worked fine. This is 1994. These extreme levels of RNG can be really annoying if you're playing a character. There's not much customization. There isn't really much innovation here. What's big about Arena is that it has a wide scope, but in terms of its progression system, it's very bland and uninteresting, and it's actually my least favorite game in the series by quite a large margin. It's a bit funny that you can tell it was clearly developed by horny young nerds, because obviously every woman that dresses like this is going to flirt with you. It's not until Daggerfall that we introduce the space demon god things, and even more important than the Daedric princes is this activity progression system. With Daggerfall, we are introduced to a new system that is quintessential to the design of every future Elder Scrolls title. It's what makes the series unique, it's what makes it special. It's not the Daedric princes, it's not the lore, it's not the setting, it's not the story, it's not the characters. It is this system. This is the special sauce that makes Elder Scrolls what it is. Where to begin? This is when the Elder Scrolls became unique, and it really became the Elder Scrolls. The Daedric princes added a simple yet distinct pantheon of gods that added a layer of mystique, intrigue, and lore to the series. This made it stand out beyond just a generic dungeon crawler with Dungeons and Dragons rules. However, I think even more important than that is the progression system overhaul and the new custom class creator that makes Daggerfall still talked about almost 30 years since its release. I gotta start with the big change, the activity progression system. This could have been inspired by tabletop games like Chaosium or basic role-playing, or possibly video games like Final Fantasy II. It's hard to say exactly though. I've watched interviews with Julian Lefay and I couldn't find it. This predates RuneScape. It came out in 1996, so we are talking about really old games and systems. How it works is surprisingly similar to even Skyrim. You hit enemies with your axe, you gain axe skill. You cast fireballs, you gain destruction skill. However, there are a lot of key differences. One of them is that you have to rest before a skill can increase, and you can only increase each skill once per 6 hours. And this kind of leads to some goofy moments where you'll wait for 6 hours just to get your skill to increase, especially in the early game when you don't really need to wait for 6 hours, so it's kind of a bit wonky. But outside of that outdated mechanic, it is actually far more granular than Skyrim, and it provides a very distinct experience. Daggerfall comes with 35 skills. Okay, 9 of them are language skills, so they don't really count, but that leaves 26 skills, real skills that the player uses, and there are no armor or block skills. Instead, almost everything you do is tied to a skill. Just like future games, you'll have magical skills that increase as you cast spells in that school, healing yourself will increase your restoration, punching and kicking increases hand to hand, buying and selling goods increases mercantile, getting attacked increases dodge, which functions like your armor skills do in future games. But Daggerfall is different in that these skills are really broken up into tiny pieces. Morrowind has acrobatics and athletics. So does Oblivion. Athletics covers running and swimming. Acrobatics covers jumping and falling. Daggerfall has running, swimming, jumping, and climbing. 4 skills all tied to just moving your character around. Oblivion has sneak that combines stealth, backstab, pickpocket, and critical strike all into one skill. This allows for builds in Daggerfall where maybe you don't stealth, but you backstab characters using your speed or paralyze to get behind them and just hit them in the back. Because each skill is so specific and tied to such a tiny piece of what you do, every activity feels like it's progressing your character. Swimming through water increases swimming. Climbing up a wall increases your climbing skill. Talking to an NPC can increase your etiquette or streetwise. Resting, literally waiting to gain health, increases your medical skill. Hitting an enemy in the back, even if you aren't sneaking, increases your backstab skill. All of your gameplay is going to increase something. This is really the quintessential Elder Scrolls experience. Playing the game, whether it's running around town or slaying monsters in a dungeon, you're always improving your character in small, granular ways. You increase your player level by increasing 6 certain skills a total of 15 times. These 6 skills are your 3 primary skills, your 2 highest major skills, and your 1 highest minor skill. This is going to lead us into talking about the custom class system because it really sets up this new progression system. Daggerfall introduced the concept of a custom class. You're no longer picking barbarian or wizard or sorcerer. You can make your own class based on what skills you think are best. The inspiration for this is really obvious to me. In 1995, the second edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide came out, and with it, a section on custom class creation. It had all of these modifiers that would add or subtract from a multiplier, which would change your experience required to advance in level. To keep the timeline in your mind, Daggerfall was released in September of 1996, just 1 year after. A little anecdote for you is my brother and I used to play around with min-maxing the perfect class based on this custom class creator in Dungeons & Dragons. First, we'd make the class that's going to be stuck at level 1 for a while as a demigod, and of course the next character is only going to need 1/40th the number of experience points, but have all of these specific weaknesses that we found a way to work around. Of course, we also made classes that were cool or actually fun to roleplay, but that didn't come first. Honestly, this is the first thing that got me into mathematics, playing around with this custom class creator to create the strongest, weakest, or most interesting class my brother and I could think of. This system is very nostalgic for me, but it's pretty flawed. Is a requirement to be lawful good and unable to associate with bards a massive flaw that should allow you to have way more hit points? Remember, you're making this class with a character in mind, so if I have a lawful good character, well, of course I'll take the I'm required to be lawful and I'm required to be good class. I get free advantages just for saying, oh, well, I know there's not going to be a bard or a paladin in my party, so I can't associate with those classes. It's a really fun and cool system, but it's not really balanced or designed to be in a video game. You are obviously intended to make these classes with a dungeon master. He's going to help rein you in and make sure this class is reasonably balanced and not just min-maxing or terrible. And that's where Julian Lefay comes in. He wanted to make a video game where your computer was the dungeon master. He noticed that, of course, tabletop role-playing games are better than any computer game. So now, Daggerfall itself is going to be the dungeon master.
Best computer role-playing game you're ever going to play is about as good as the worst pen and paper role-playing game.
Right.
Okay? That's exactly right. That shouldn't be so. What is it about a dungeon master and playing pen and paper that works, right? That doesn't work in computers. The world, everything grew out of that idea of I'm going to try to make a dungeon master in your computer.
Julian is talking about a philosophy not only for world and quest design, but also in the system's balance and design. Unlike the class creator from AD&D, the Daggerfall class creator had to have some semblance of balance, but it still tried to give you what felt like limitless role-playing options. If you wanted to play as yourself, a maidenless loser who never sees the light of day, you could set your personality to 10 by just clicking the down arrow until it's at 10. You could click on Edit Special Disadvantages, Add Available Disadvantages, and click on Damage from Sunlight. Then I'll take damage whenever I see the sun. Instead, we'll play as Short King because I'm a Wood Elf, though this is actually the only game that Wood Elves are tall. But we're going to pick something very different from the typical gamer. We're going to choose athleticism and make sure we have a high personality. Also, because we hate other elves, we'll do Forbidden Material Elven. The multiplier for your experience points difference now is based on what advantages and disadvantages you pick, or how much hit dice do you pick per level. But editing my reputations, while maybe I really like merchants but I hate poor people, that's no longer going to change how much experience you gain like it did in the AD&D system. So the system we have is now based on these skills. You have 3 primary, 3 major, 6 minor, and a whole bunch of miscellaneous. None of your miscellaneous skills ever contribute to your player level. Right now, my highest minor skill is 25, so increasing any of these skills to 26 will give me 1 point towards my next level, whether that's running or something else passes it up. Major skills, it's the top 2, and for primary, any of them, no matter what, contribute to my level progression. It's 15 increases total, I gain a level. Upon level up, you roll your hit dice. So I set this character's hit dice to 30. That means their health gain on level is between 15 and 30. It's much less punishing than Arena, which rolled 1 to 30. But it can still feel pretty annoying if you're only gaining half the health of another character who's playing identically to you. Also, when you gain a level, you gain 4 to 6 attributes to increase, and it's just RNG. There are trainers in this game. It costs 100 gold per level, and they all cost the same, whether you're training a skill that's really high or really low. On top of that, choosing it will drain my fatigue, it'll pass 3 hours of game time, and it won't increase my skill until I actually rest now. And no skills can be trained above 50. You try to train again, it says you can't train until you've rested. So training is really only spammable if you're in a fighter's guild because you can train, rest, but anywhere else you can't rest in the guild that you're training at. So it's something that you do every single time you go pick up a quest, you gain 1 extra free skill point, but it's not something that you just stand there and spam. I rested, I gained the level, my health went up, it went from 69 to 87. I have a +1 modifier for my endurance, so I could have gained 31. If I had a perfect roll for my level, I would have 100 health. I didn't, so I have 87 health. I did gain 6 attributes, so that's actually a pretty good level. So picking locked doors, running, jumping, attacking enemies, casting spells, all of the above is increasing a bunch of different skills. As you can see, my illusion went up, my stealth went up, I'm invisible, so he couldn't see me and I could hit him in the back. My backstabbing's increasing, my short blade's increasing, my running's increasing. If I'm jumping, my jumping's increasing. So many different skills increase as you play this game, especially if you choose to have a character that utilizes a lot of skills. The more you do, the more experience you gain. It's not based on what monster you killed or what quest you completed. It's based on what actions you're performing as you play the game. The more actions you do, the more stuff you do, the better experience gain you get. We'll circle back to Daggerfall later in this video because Daggerfall really is a pivotal point in the series and it changes quite a bit as we jump to Morrowind. Now we're going to fast forward 6 years into the future, into 2002. Morrowind is a cult classic of the Elder Scrolls. It's famous for a variety of reasons. One of them is it changes the setting to this alien place of Vardenfell. Mushrooms, weird hippies in their underwear, even weirder hippies spreading diseases also in their underwear, a hermaphrodite mortal god, other mortal gods, some creepy old guy who clones himself, but he makes sure the clones are women, just so he can actually fuck himself and somehow not be gay while doing so. But this video is not about all that. It took the next step from Daggerfall in revolutionizing the progression system. The language skills, which didn't work very well, were removed. Climbing was also removed, and in my opinion, stealth was made far worse, but something cooler was introduced. Gone is the day of rolling hit dice at level up or spending a random amount of attribute bonus. Now, your health gain is determined only by your endurance. Your attribute increases are determined by the actual actions you take throughout the level. If you want to increase your strength, you don't just click the up arrow for strength at level up. You actually have to pick up that axe and chop down some trees. And by trees, I mean cliff racers. It was actually Arena that first said that skills were governed by certain attributes. Lockpicking is governed by agility because agility helps you pick locks. In Daggerfall, this didn't make any sense because it's not true. It didn't really do anything. But Morrowind, now it matters again. Acrobatics govern strength. That means when I level acrobatics, I increase my strength. This system is very innovative and creative. Not only do we have this RuneScape-like activity progression for skills, but that progression is now also tied to your attribute and health gains on level up. The way you play doesn't just determine what experience you gain like it did in Daggerfall, but it actually determines your entire growth and power. It's not boring like experience points. There's no RNG for your health or attribute distribution. It matters how you play. Every action has a small impact on your character. I believe that this was the peak of Elder Scrolls creativity and innovation. However, amazing new ideas always come with downsides and new problems. Your weapon material no longer increases your hit chance, and even though spellmaking saw some serious advancements, you can now fail to cast spells. The combination of these two things leads to a system where you really can't just level up your worst skills. In Daggerfall, if I wanted to level up my destruction from 5, I would just cast some destruction spells. But in Morrowind, you won't even be able to cast destruction spells. You'll simply fail them. If you can't use it, you can't increase it. In some RPGs, this is the intention. You're not meant to use your minor skills. You're meant to pick a build and then use your skills that you chose. But combined with this attribute system, where increasing your skills is also how you increase your attributes, well, now there's no good way to level up your attributes because you can't level up those low-level skills. Well, there is one way, and it's trainers. The limits on trainers have been removed entirely. In fact, the game pushes you to simply ignore the system they built, arguably the best system in all of gaming in my opinion, and to just use trainers. Spend gold, skip the system. I'll quickly clarify exactly how this system works. Remember that image I showed you where each skill is governed by an attribute? Well, if I increase Axe and Acrobatics each by 3 times, that means I've increased 6 total strength skills that level. That means I will get a +3 multiplier to choose for strength at level up if I happen to choose strength for that level up. To get to the largest multiplier, you need 10 skill increases that fall under that attribute each level. That's actually quite a bit because remember, you only need a total of 10 skill ups between your major and minors to gain a level. So you need to be using your miscellaneous skills as well if you want to get good solid bonuses. But back to trainers, I want to show you a quick montage of just spending gold, watching my character go from about level 20 something to level 50. And after the fact, we'll talk about the actual differences between my character before and after. Getting gold in this game is also very easy. There are creature merchants. You could use an alchemy loop. Buying and selling back ingredients can get you infinite of one ingredient and easily get to 100 alchemy. There are enemies out in the wild like these golden saints. When you kill them, they drop items that have 50,000, 15,000, 20,000 gold values. There are grand soul gems lying around with 60,000 value if you put a soul in them. Particular items, especially when your character gets higher level, just have obnoxiously high values. It's very easy to get very, very high amounts of gold in this game. And then when you do, well, instead of trying to increase a skill that's level 5, this is what you do right here. Okay, sorry that took so long, but this is what my character looked like at the beginning of that. Level 22, about 250 health, 46 armor, and mediocre skills. All I did was spend gold. I didn't actually play the game. Now that same character has over 500 health. I just doubled my health, got to level 50. All my attributes have a baseline of 100 except personality and luck, and I didn't even power level that much. I still have 2 more levels to go for medium armor. I still have to train enchant. I could do speechcraft, restoration. There's still a lot more levels I could do. I just have to go travel to those trainers, and I got really bored because I let you watch it on 10 or 20 times speed. But it is absolutely the most boring type of gameplay. The most efficient, fastest way to create a super absurdly powerful character is to just get a couple powerful items, sell them, and then go to trainers. You just have to find all the trainers in the world. That is the progression system in Morrowind. It's not go use your skills, it's go find the correct trainer. That is by far the number one most effective way to create a powerful character. And that kind of undermines the whole point of the system. So the Morrowind leveling system took what they had in Daggerfall and connected the attributes and skills together. This also punishes you a bit for power leveling. If I just spam my alchemy up to 100, I'm not getting any attributes except that +5 to intelligence for the first level. So you'd think to yourself, okay, I have to actually play the game. Sometimes in Daggerfall, you might find yourself just standing in an inn, spamming 3 different spells over and over again to raise those skills and then resting. In Morrowind, this is really not a good idea because, well, you want to raise your endurance, you want to raise your strength and your speed. You don't just want to sit there and grind out spells. Really, the problem is trainers. Due to the grindy nature of some skills, it was pretty much the only way to reliably level some of the skills in Morrowind. After playing for hundreds of hours over the span of multiple decades, sure, now I know how to power level Mercantile. But seriously, I'm not going to do that. It's way easier to just go to the Master Trainer. I could go out and attack enemies with a spear to try and get my endurance up, but if you have low spear skill, you can't hit anything. It's not like you can find an ebony spear and get plus 50% chance to hit compared to an iron spear. You can just spend 1,000 gold, level it up 10 times, now you get your +5 endurance. You never need to equip a spear. Some people enjoy this system of utilizing trainers to gain attributes and, all the more power to them, but I personally don't enjoy it. Some of the skills also have this problem where they level faster as they get higher level. Block is probably the most egregious. If you have a low level block, you'll only block 10% of attacks, but late game when you have a high block skill, you'll block 50% of them. This means you'll block 5 times as frequently, but you only need 2 or 3 times as much experience. So your skills actually start to go up faster due to the fail system. From my personal experience with Morrowind, when I first played it, it was very difficult in the early game because I didn't know what I was doing. But at some point I crossed a threshold. It was a combination of understanding of game mechanics, but also just my character's level. Somewhere around level 40-ish, it hits like a wall. The game is over. Sure, the journey was fun. Morrowind is one of my favorite games of all time. It's a classic. But there are 2 fundamental problems with the design. Progression is either absurdly slow and difficult if you skip out on trainers. If you don't use them, it's incredibly punishing. However, the economy is really unbalanced. You can find these items that are worth 60,000 gold, get a ton of money, and then the other hand is you do use trainers. And if you do utilize trainers, the game becomes trivialized. There is no leveling system. You just decide what level you want to pick. Do I want to spend an hour talking to trainers? Well, then you'll get to level 50. So did Morrowind improve upon the Daggerfall system? Well, yes, greatly in my opinion. You no longer have RNG to determine your attribute gains or your health gains. You actually determine your own attribute gains by using your skills or talking to a trainer. Using your weapon and armor skills will gain you strength and endurance. Casting a bunch of spells will get you willpower and intelligence. If you play like a thief, you'll get speed, agility, or personality. In my opinion, the flaws in this system come from the power of trainers and the linear experience requirements. Low levels are difficult to increase, so if you want to get solid attribute gains with your miscellaneous skills, you just go to a trainer. It's the only feasible option. Well, are these problems fixed with Oblivion? Some of them are, and there's some new problems. Let's jump ahead 4 years to 2006. Many of the systems carried over from Morrowind to Oblivion. This is the only time in the Elder Scrolls series where the sequel to a game is very similar in its progression and leveling systems to its prequel. Daggerfall changed way more from Arena, Morrowind changed way more from Daggerfall, and Skyrim changes way more from Oblivion. In both of them, your class creation is choose your minor and major skills, pick a race which now determines your starting attributes, unlike Daggerfall. Pick two favorite attributes that get a small bonus. Choose a specialization that gives a small boost to a category of skills based on the Trinity, Warrior, Thief, or Mage. This gives them a small boost and makes them level faster. And then choose a birth sign, which gives you like a small advantage or a combination of advantages and disadvantages. First, we got to talk about what Oblivion lost. It lost Levitate. That sucks. Levitate was cool. If you disagree, you're wrong. It could have been a high level mysticism spell with a higher base cost, but it should not have been scrapped entirely. Also, the overpowered consumables are gone, like the scrolls that fortify acrobatics by 1000, or give you a 500 magnitude levitate spell. Okay, but this is about progression systems. While the base system is really similar to Morrowind, there's some obvious changes and a lot of behind the scenes numbers that tweaked, which gives the player a dramatically different experience. On the surface, instead of choosing 5 minor and 5 major skills, you now just have 7 majors, and all the others count as miscellaneous skills, though they're called minors. The weapon skills were removed and all combined into blade and blunt. Unarmored and medium armor were scrapped. That feeling that I talked about before with Daggerfall, where every single action feels like you're gaining experience, this is the first time it's slightly diminished. Now, if you get hit by an enemy and you're not wearing armor, you don't gain experience. That's the first time this happened. Unarmored, no longer being a skill, caused this to happen. You still have running, jumping, swimming, mercantile, speechcraft, and most of the skills, so that feeling isn't really gone, but it's not 100% there either, so it's clearly not a design philosophy. The other obvious and big change is that hit chance and cast spell failure are gone. Personally, I did not like spell cast chance. It only lasted for one game. I think reducing magic cost instead of increasing your chance to cast it, it's a lot more dynamic and interesting. But these changes mean you gain a lot more experience when skills are at low levels. Instead of swinging 20 times at a tough enemy, hitting them 5 times and getting 5 experience like in Morrowind, in Oblivion, if you swing 20 times, well, you're connecting 20 times. So if you only have 5 skill, you gain the same amount of experience as if you had 90 skill. We're going to have to look at the details to actually understand the differences here, though, because it's not just how much experience you gain, it's how much experience is required. In Morrowind, if you had 50 spear skill, you needed 51 spear hits to go up a level. If it's a major skill or specialized, you needed less because the multipliers here. Let's look at the data. We'll do a table and then we'll do a graph. This is assuming these spear skill levels or these blade skill levels, how many swings and hits would it take to level up as a miscellaneous skill, a minor skill, or a major skill? In Morrowind, as you can see, when your skill level is very low, well, you have a very low hit chance, so you have to swing a lot to gain any levels. As you get to a point where you hit reliably, you don't need to hit as many times, and then late game it kind of evens out because you're hitting 100% of the time, but you need, 90, 91, 92 more experience. In Oblivion, it starts very low. You gain levels incredibly quickly, but it has an exponential formula. So by the end of the game, if you don't have something as a specialization or a major skill, it will level very, very slow, and it's almost required that you pick it as a major skill and specialize in it if you want to actually use a skill and get to 100 skill level with that skill. This right here kind of highlights exactly what I'm talking about. The red line is the amount of swings it would take to level up a weapon skill in Oblivion. The blue line is how many swings it would take on average, assuming your hit chance is exactly equal to your skill. So if your opponent has the same agility as you, they have the same luck as you, and they have any sanctuary to counteract your attack value, and you have the same fatigue value. So obviously it's not going to be exactly this, but on average it's going to be pretty close. In Morrowind, your skills take a long time to level up, and it gets slightly faster as you continue on in the game. In Oblivion, you see this down here, it says 5. This is if you are at 5 skill level, you actually level very quickly. It only takes a few swings. Attack an enemy 5 times, you'll gain a level. But as you go on further into the game, it levels very, very slowly. It's about the same speed as Morrowind, around level 47. Again, depending on your hit chance, specialization, major skills, there's a lot of variables here, so this is a generalization. But then late game, it levels very slowly. It slows down, and so if you didn't pick this as a major skill, it's slower. That's sort of the different feel here. And this is really important because of the attribute leveling system and how you might overcome it. Or more specifically, the best way for players to interact with the system. I've already talked about the power of trainers in Morrowind. This footage here, I have 7 blunt skill and I'm trying to kill a Khajiit to gain my blunt skill and hopefully get a better strength bonus on level up. This is not practical. It takes a very long time. It's not really an option. This is on 2 times speed so we don't fall asleep. This means if I want to gain the strength attribute, I'm not going to use my blunt weapon. I'm going to spend a little bit of gold at a trainer. I'll have them level up my blunt skill. Then when I level up, I'll gain a better strength bonus. Oblivion changed that entirely. Now trainers are limited, you can only use 5 per level. However, because of this leveling speed difference, you actually can just use your skills. You pick a skill that's level 5, for example, hand to hand, and you can very quickly gain 5 levels in that and get a +3 attribute bonus. In a different video that I'm showing here, I timed myself starting in the tutorial to see how long it would take to gain 5 hand-to-hand skill, and it took less than a single minute. The design of Oblivion now fully integrates what Morrowind started, and I would describe the philosophy and system thusly. Every action, no matter how big or small, improves your ability to perform that action. And to a lesser degree, it improves your ability to perform similar actions. Let's break that down. If I swing my mace killing goblins, I gain blunt skill. But this now also translates to the strength attribute, which slightly improves my ability to punch, swing a sword, or carry more weight, which is similar actions. If I cast a bunch of fireballs, I get better at shooting fireballs, but it also slightly improves my ability to heal myself or cast feather spells due to increased magicka regeneration through willpower. The system is not perfect. I think it's perfect, but it is convoluted and confusing. Video essays galore and wiki articles detailing the leveling problem sprouted up everywhere. People came up with the most insane metagamey theories ever, intentionally staying at level 1, never using major skills, relying on slow leveling minor skills to gain power. The system allowed you to grind for hours to get that maximum +5 attribute bonus for each level. This, in hindsight, is obviously a massive waste of time. The attribute bonuses are not that impactful, especially just gaining 2 more, and you can get all your attributes to 100 anyway, their maximum, without doing this grinding. But that didn't stop people from refusing to engage with the system and declaring it broken, evil, and stupid, and, of course, objectively bad game design. There were some legitimate problems with balance, infinitely scaled enemies, a handful of enemies that pushed the boundaries of damage sponge to new limits. People didn't like that bandits could never carry low-level equipment when you reached a high level, or that lower-level creatures simply disappeared as you got too high level. If you like modding, by the way, these are the 2 settings that cause that to happen. The default is 8, when maybe 10 or 15 would be a better number. So Oblivion had fixed the problem of trainers and grindy low-level skills and created its own new system. Skyrim set out to fix the entire broken leveling system.
And when the truth finally dawns, it dawns in fire.
Where to even begin? Like most entries into the series, Skyrim changed quite a bit from what came before. The activity progression system is still there, so if I cast restoration spells, I gain restoration skill. If I wear heavy armor and I get hit, I gain heavy armor skill. Now there are perks, meaning if I gain two-handed skill and I gain a level, upon every level I get 1 perk to spend, I can spend that perk in one of my skills. I'm going to assume most of you know the basics of Skyrim. Attributes are gone and character creation is gone. Now you only select your race. There is no birth sign, there are no attributes whatsoever, so of course there's no favorite attribute. You don't pick your specialization. Now you could pick a birth stone, which is sort of similar to a specialization, but not really because it's not permanent. And there are no major skills or minor skills. You just have your skills. The philosophy that I kept bringing up is functionally gone. With the removal of hand-to-hand as a skill, punching an enemy no longer gains you any experience. You don't get better at cooking as you cook. You don't get better at fishing as you fish. You don't get better at sprinting as you sprint. You don't get better at jumping or running as you jump or run. None of these things increase your player power anymore. Not just your player power, you simply don't get better at these things anymore. So even though there's still the activity progression, there's so many activities that can happen, such as running, jumping, swimming, that are now no longer tied to any skill whatsoever. The skills are also not tied together through common attributes. Using one-handed will never increase your two-handed damage. They're just totally separate because they're not both governed by strength anymore. The philosophy is scrapped. The reasoning behind the classes being gone, well,
get this comment in Elder Scrolls like, oh, you simplified it. Like, no. We moved those choices into the gameplay so that you don't, make this character in the beginning and then 8 hours later realize you make a horrible mistake. And so, okay, I'm going to start out like that. To me is a really, really bad experience. It sounds weird, but you mostly want that beginning character generation to be visual, which you then can also change in the game. So we have moved away post, Oblivion to a classless, meaning you don't have a strict character class, warrior, mage, thief, whatever, in our games.
Well, there you have Todd's reasoning for removing classes, attributes, and specializations. I would argue that the 3 previous games also did not have traditional classes. There is nothing stopping one character from doing everything, gaining 100 in each skill, getting 100 in each attribute, and doing everything they want. In Daggerfall, Morrowind, and Oblivion, classes were designed to choose which skills would level up fastest and what your starting build is. But you are absolutely not tied down to any one build. If you want to switch from a sword to a bow, you just start using a bow. Morrowind was the easiest to do this because there's trainers. Daggerfall was still fairly easy because if you got a Daedric bow, for example, it would have such a plus high chance to hit that it wouldn't matter that you didn't have great skill. You could make up for that. Oblivion, it was a little trickier and grindier, but when your skills were low, they leveled up really fast, so it wasn't so bad either. In fact, Skyrim is the first time his philosophy here isn't true. His philosophy that he just laid out is not achieved in Skyrim, but it is achieved in the 3 previous games. If you put 10 perk points into one-handed, you'll never get those points back, at least in the vanilla games. You might make a build due to spending perks in a bad way or spending your attributes, health, stamina, or magicka, in a bad way that you can't switch builds. You've destroyed your character, and you get this horrible feeling that he described where you have to start over. What really bothers me about this answer is not just that I disagree with Todd because I don't think what he describes is a horrible experience, making a second character, but I think he literally didn't fix that experience he is describing, but simply made it worse. Alright, enough negging Todd. At the start of his clip, Todd Howard says that Skyrim isn't simplified, and he isn't entirely wrong. In fact, there's a common complaint that Skyrim simplified things from Oblivion and Oblivion simplified things from Morrowind. This isn't exactly true, it's an incredibly simplistic view of the changes, ironically enough. Oblivion added fame, infamy, renown, doomstone, skill perks, poisons that could be used on weapons, sigil stones, environmental traps, and most importantly, NPCs with schedules so they actually exist in the world, rather than behaving like people-shaped books or kiosks that you interact with. These things add a level of depth and complexity that I think people are referring to when they use the word simplicity. Then Skyrim added shouts, which required Dragon Souls, had their own separate cooldown. It tripled the number of skill perks. They added disenchanting, dual casting, spell runes, channeled spells, and the alchemy effect discovery system. With all that said though, there is one thing that was objectively simplified: the leveling system. I feel a bit strange even explaining Skyrim. It seems like a waste of time, but I probably should do it a little bit. All your skills start at a baseline 15. Your race gives you small boosts, either plus 5 or plus 10 to a variety of these skills. Actions give experience, and it actually did improve from Oblivion. If you're using a better base weapon, you get more one-handed experience or two-handed experience. If you cast a more expensive spell, you gain more magic skill experience. If you vendor a more expensive item, you get more speech experience. Sadly, this wasn't fully fleshed out. Power attacks don't give extra experience. Dealing bonus damage from perks, potions, or enchants doesn't give bonus experience. The system overall is good. I think it's not great, and overall I think it was a moderate downgrade, but in a way it actually feels a bit more like a traditional RPG. You're gaining experience points. You think of it as, oh, I gained one-handed skill, it went from 50 to 51, now I gained experience points to my next level. You play the game, at first you quickly gain levels, as you continue they slow down. Now all of your skills contribute to your overall level rather than just your major skills. The idea that this system is worse is definitely a personal opinion. Let's listen to Bruce Nesmith describe the changes in his own words. He was the lead designer in Skyrim.
The magic system was all new. Todd was a little dubious that we needed something new, but I persuaded him and he said, okay, go ahead and make me something completely new. So I, threw out the baby in the bathwater and did something new. We fine-tuned the character system so that it was even better at, you just do it and you get better at it without all the weird quirkiness that Morrowind and Oblivion had.
Instead of going deeper into the math and leveling system for Skyrim, for this section of the video, I want to go deeper into what Bruce is talking about here. He did not like or appreciate the overall systems in Morrowind and Oblivion, so he scrapped them. His own words were, threw the baby out with the bathwater. This is interesting to me because people really highlight and point this out a lot with Skyrim, but not with Oblivion, not with Morrowind, and not with Daggerfall. Each of these games is a sequel. And, well, sequels change. I'm not bitter about Skyrim because I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let's go all the way back to 1996, Daggerfall. Julian Lefay is giving an interview. He gets asked the question, hey, what are you most proud of with Daggerfall? And he says, quote, what I really like about the game is the freedom it offers. With the item maker, spell maker, and character maker, we try to give players as much freedom as possible. With all this freedom, players can create their very own game. And now look, in Skyrim, the character maker, class maker, spell maker, those are all gone. 2/3 of that freedom entirely scrapped because Bruce Nesmith didn't like it, because Todd thinks restarting a game is horrible. But Julian Lefay also said something else in that same interview. His interviewer asked, Daggerfall is a city in a typical fantasy role-playing world. The medieval-looking cities and characters aren't that different from those of existing role-playing games. Julian responded by saying, quote, I have to admit, I like traditional games and stories. We didn't want to create something bizarre. What really matters is the gameplay, the content, and the things the player can do in the game. I think players will agree with me. Not everything has to be wildly super original, as long as it's well liked. Wow, I agree 1000% with Julian here. My opinion isn't really the point of this section. I'm demonstrating that a sequel changing things, even core philosophies, is not objectively a bad thing. So after Daggerfall comes Morrowind, which, well, here, I can just quote Michael Kirkbride, the writing and art director for Morrowind. Here's Kirkbride during an interview.
Kurt and I wanted to do a pirate game, and specifically a pirate game set in like, the clouds of Jupiter, right?
Yeah.
And like airships and naval combat.
Okay, wait, that's insane. But that was for the Elder Scrolls Redguard. But back to Morrowind. Later in that same interview, Kirkbride said,
And by then I had been drawn like, bug riding dark elves with like this weird Baroque like insect armor, and Kurt and I had we had a strong love for kind of weird fantasy, like as a genre, and we wanted to take Daggerfall's kind of medieval spin on it and kind of kick that aside for this third game, and we wanted to get really weird.
I'll repeat that one line again. We wanted to take Daggerfall's kind of medieval spin and kick that aside. He didn't give a shit what the second game did. It's his game. He's making the third game. Just like Todd Howard doesn't care what Morrowind was, doesn't care what Oblivion was, he was making Skyrim. He looked at Oblivion, one of my favorite games, and said, custom classes? Screw that. Those can give players a horrible experience. I hate this because I love custom classes. I like character creation. It's one of my favorite things. It's awesome. At the same time, I'm okay with them iterating. He's making his own thing. It's the same way that Morrowind kicking Daggerfall aside isn't so upsetting. Morrowind is cool, so no one complains or cares that Kirkbride didn't follow Julian Lefay's vision. I apply this same standard to Skyrim. Skyrim's pretty cool and pretty fun. It's absurdly popular. So yeah, we kind of let it go that they don't have custom spells, custom classes, attributes. Their granular leveling system, it's not quite like RuneScape enough for me. And I know in this space, talking about Elder Scrolls, we like to complain about Skyrim, we like to complain about Bethesda, and everyone is convinced that the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be horrible. Part of me is a contrarian, so of course that part of me wants to disagree. But even beyond that, I do disagree because it seems every single one of these games, they make their own thing. It's completely different. They're not going to be beholden to Starfield or Fallout 4, because obviously those are totally different, but they're also not beholden to Skyrim in the same way that Skyrim wasn't beholden to Oblivion, in the same way that Morrowind didn't have to stick to Daggerfall. It could get weird. Kirkbride could do what he wanted. I know the ending here kind of went off track of the rest of the video, but whatever, man. Thanks for watching.
The hate that we got from certain small but vocal quarters about us doing Fallout, you cannot believe the vitriol. It's just staggering. They wanted Fallout 3 to be like Fallout 2. They wanted it to be quirky. They wanted it to be their game and not a mass marketed game, because games that are niche, when people like them, they feel like they have ownership. They feel like they belong to an exclusive club, and they wanted that.